Just your friendly neighborhood wellness advocate, the outdoor guide for your inner journey. See the camouflage hat? That proves it. Kraig Smyth here, my biz guide, Business of Being Human. Welcome to the show, Friday night wellness workshop. Tonight's topic is flow. Welcome to the show about flow. I'll try not to rhyme anymore. I don't want to get too crazy here. So yeah, always appreciate everybody showing up. Friday night might not be convenient for everybody, but it's one night that I'm able to commit. So here we are. So definitely appreciate everybody. And welcome to the 1-year anniversary. I've been doing the Friday night workshops for a year already. So yeah, Zoom said that I've done what, 20 something, 24, 25 every other week for a year. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Maybe since it's a special day, maybe I'll wrap up a cool MyBizGuide coffee cup at the end. How about that? Neato, huh? You got that? Actually, you've also got some refrigerator magnets. Neato, huh? CEO of yourself, embrace it. Oops, that's the one I just had. Oh, there's a good one. Everyone needs that one. Are those the right way? Can you guys read those, or are they backwards?
Yeah, I can
Okay,
see it.
cool. Okay, cool. So I've been doing this. Oh, there's a good one. Shantae, you need that one. Everyone needs that one.
Yeah, definitely. I like that one. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Intelligence of conscious is all of these. Wow. Nice. Good one.
Yeah. So the refrigerator magnets, everybody goes to the refrigerator. So if we talk about environment and the wellness environment, just like having medicine on the dash, right? We got medicine on the refrigerator too.
You think those hold up on my bumper?
No,
No.
no.
Hmm. Could always glue it.
Yeah, you could glue them. You can get some clear duct tape.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, if I forget, someone will remind me. But I'll give some of that stuff away. Y'all should all have one anyways. My core group here.
Mhm.
So talking about flow, ebb and flow, I say one of the 7 natural laws, connection to everything, Omatakayasi, sustainability, challenge, balance, ebb flow, cycles, carrying capacity. So
Mhm.
they're all really intertwined. And a lot of times we talk about ebb and flow, or flow and ebb and flow. And there's an important piece to that, and balance. All these things show each other. All these things are interconnected and work together. It's interconnection is one of those natural laws, and of course the natural laws are interconnected. It's honestly hard to talk about them separately. Maybe you can't. We'll see how that turns out. One of the best ways. Well, let's talk about flow. Like, what is flow, first of all? I think that's one of the more common things that I talk about that people might have a little bit more of an understanding right off the bat. Went to yoga class today. So if you go to yoga, if you've ever been to yoga, that's what they talk about. They talk about flow and our movements in sync with our breath, and if we talk about the Eastern martial arts is a lot about flow and connecting with flow. And energy is really the thing. So a good place to talk about energy, because people are kind of already introduced to that. Acupuncture is about releasing flow. If we talk about getting rid of blockages, and I've heard people say energy blockages or releasing energy gates, that kind of thing. And I'm not super woo-woo to say it that way, but energy is real and flow is real. So we're going to talk a lot about how to let our flow happen, and of course identifying blockages, which of course that's what you're used to hearing me talk about. What are some blockages that keep our flow from happening? And with that carrying capacity, I was talking with an esteemed colleague earlier and talking about carrying capacity, and we were talking about, well, there's naturally occurring carrying capacity. Like in nature, there's limits to how many organisms a square inch of soil or a mile of stream can sustainably hold. And of course, all the different organisms in each one of those respective ecosystems all work off each other, and there's different life cycles that are happening at different times to allow the peak capacity to happen in those ecosystems. So there's natural examples of what carrying capacity is. And we've got our external examples, which is wonderful. Isn't that an amazing thing that we've got so many external examples of natural laws? It's really easy to, if we understand those, then we can understand our internal ecosystems, right? And multiple ecosystems. Life is made up of interconnected ecosystems, and we are an ecosystem ourselves. We are an ecosystem, and we're in an ecosystem. So by seeing natural examples of how ecosystems function and natural examples of those natural laws, that interconnectivity, the sustainability, challenge, balance, ebb, flow, cycles, carrying capacity, we can reflect on what that is within ourselves. So the natural examples of carrying capacity in the natural environment, the one that we developed in as a species, the one that every species is developed in. Well, that's the perfect model. But as people, needless to say, we're a little bit off track. And we're growing too. So all these things are happening at the same time. You know, we're off track, but also there's so many lessons of understanding that as we adjust, we're getting on track. And as we understand, we can realign. And a lot of this about flow is also about alignment. But there's things that our own carrying capacity, we're not working at peak flow because of a lot of false narratives, a lot of constrictions in our ideologies, constrictions in contemporary life as a whole. One of those huge constrictions to our flow is challenge. So another one of these natural laws interweaving, but the challenge of life and death facilitates life. And people in contemporary society are so far removed from having real challenge. And again, this is the way our species developed, with real challenge. In nature, there's naturally occurring challenges. That's how we grow. And this is why it's a natural law. But to go back to the part where contemporary society's, a little off track, there's this narrative that easier is better. And that's not true. Efficiency is key. But not at the cost, not, but easy is not necessarily better. It's just efficiency. And if something's as efficient as it can be, then it's as easy as it can be, but it could still be hard. It could still be difficult. So there can be difficulty. We can be doing things to the best of our ability and they can still be difficult, but that's okay. Going up against that difficulty is a super, super critical thing. But if we were going to do a psychological profile of the average American, we probably see a lot of blockages in relation to challenge because people have such a eroded relationship with, for one, work in general, you know. And speaking of flow, water. We'll get to water lessons. Work in contemporary society, unfortunately, has kind of got a bad rap, and rightly so. But there's a big difference between work, the classic worst example in contemporary society of being a cog in the wheel, involuntary servitude, having to go to work to make money, to pay taxes, just so we can buy things to live. I mean, we are stuck in a system. We're slaves to the system, we're that's it. We are, so there's some things, speaking of flow, nothing's going to happen if we don't address the challenges. So there we go, back again. Addressing challenges is key. But I'll use that direct example. If I say something that's really profound and seems like an unsurmountable challenge, a lot of people first reaction is, oh, that's a lot of work to undo that. But that's reaction shows the dam that's blocking the flow, because the other parts of work are the things that allow us to understand and growing solutions, our personal development journey is work. So if I first start talking to a client, one of those key first things I say is, we got to make sure that you have a good relationship with the concept behind the words work and serious, by the way. But work, to be able to have a good relationship with the challenge, is key to letting flow happen. Okay, having a good relationship with the concept of challenge, with that natural law of challenge, is key to letting flow happen. Because instead of challenges having a negative implication, which again, that's stifling flow. Why is that not abundance? Because we need challenge. If we run out of challenges, what does that mean? That means we're done. We can't run out of challenges. We want infinite challenges. Some of the challenges, one could develop a very good argument that they shouldn't be there. And I might develop that argument myself. But even these insurmountable challenges, that's the time to engage, especially when there's more at stake than just our own comfort and convenience. And that is a blockage, right? So we just went around the circle and talking about people's poor relationship with challenge, and that wanting the easy way. So people are looking for easy without the understanding of efficiency, right? So efficiency is the key, but if that's lost, which it mostly is. People spend more effort finding the easy way than actually doing things right, because they don't have that holistic understanding of efficiency and just in general. But that's a lesson from work. If we work and if we understand what works, right? Just like that. Whoops, bear with me. Just like this refrigerator magnet. This might be one of my favorite. Right and wrong. The original context of right and wrong is, does it work or does it not? Something like that. Yeah. Does it work or does it not work? And so through that understanding of work, we grow our efficiency. And that transcends physical also. Obviously, round peg, round hole, square peg, square hole. But through those physical lessons, we can understand how things work on our mental, emotional, spiritual levels also. So a negative association with work is damming our flow that allows us to embrace challenge. And that's a key example. That's a prime, that's like a big picture perspective. Of course, there's a ton of other little tips and tricks to undoing blockages, but that's a real core one. And I think we did a workshop on work in Sirius and understanding, work for doing our personal development, very positive, embracing challenge, very positive, being a cog in the wheel of contemporary society, very negative. But all those are going to be translated to ourselves when we're through our thought process. All those are going to translate to work. So here's where the consciousness part comes in. Everyone with me so far? It's super important to stay conscious so we can really assess our feelings on an energetic level, not just shortcutting to and trying to label our feelings with words. And to pay attention to our on our introspection journey, pay attention to the energy. What's the energy? And to be able to trace our energy. What are we talking about? Are we talking about a positive personal development challenge, or are we talking about a challenge in, going to the day job or whatever? Both of those things super critical to have a healthy attitude about. But that meditation around work and having a good relationship with that concept, super critical to allowing flow to happen, because flow is going into an open space. So if we're positive, if we've got more room, if we have understanding and context, if we sit down and meditate about all the different kinds of work, and so we have that introspection and do that introspect with ourselves. I'm sorry if I'm messing up those words. I'll have to come back. There's some terminology here I'm working with that I was clued in. That's there's some pre-established language, but introspection. If we're doing that meditation and growing our understanding around work, that gives us more context. And so it's doing two things. It's filling us up, and it's also letting flow to happen at the same time. So this is where, science is not going to be able to, the scientific method isn't going to be able to catch up on anything like this. It's an energetic understanding. But when we grow our understanding, we're growing contexts, sitting, thinking about the different ways that work shows up and the different translations that work can come under from those two extremes, that huge grayscale of work. Or if we say as a species, we've got work to do. But again, we need challenge, we need work, and to make sure that that's not a negative is super important. So when we have that holistic understanding of a concept, we allow flow to happen because we're in a state of openness and acceptance. And the common lesson there is osmosis. So they used to do this in 7th grade science. I think everyone here is probably old enough for that. I don't know what they're doing now, but osmosis is basically, they use water as an example, but when something goes from a place of higher volume to lesser volume, or yes, higher volume to lesser volume. So if there's they'll have what they call a semi-permeable membrane, a divider that is porous, and you fill up one half of the divider with water, and then it flows through until the other half is filled up with equal amounts of water. Does everybody remember that experiment with osmosis? Everyone understands osmosis and the movement from a higher volume to a lower volume. So basically flow and water is the example of flow. It moves into a place of less resistance. So if we have openness, like I said, our understanding both fills us up and creates openness at the same time. So we have information, so we have context, so our cognitive process can work, but then also our energy alignment works because it's a bigger space. I don't know how else to say that, so you have to be creative here. But both things are examples of space, and in some kind of way, in the energetic way, we've got more context in our mind, we have more information, so that's in essence taking up space. So it's a bigger target for us to relate to. If we say it that way, if we were going to do some kind of psychographic about how the mind actually works from the inside out, our understanding gives us like a bigger stepstone. If we're in water, our understanding gives us a bigger rock to climb out on and to stand on, gives us more leverage, gives us a better angle, all those things. And then that allows flow, this energy, to come through. So the more understanding about a situation that we have, that's when it gets into the energetic field. And we can feel the flow happen the more understanding we have in a certain context, in a certain subject. Another example of that, a good pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is flow. One of those key things about being human and thought process and understanding how our cognitive function tool works, right? Even though we're talking about energy and energy flow, our cognitive function is facilitating that flow. Our cognitive function is facilitating this information about, X topic, whatever it is. So huge, important thing to not restrict our cognitive function. I will maybe say more about that later, an aspect of our species development historically and why we are where we are now. I think everyone here knows that aspect anyways. So I won't belabor that point. People on Facebook are getting drugged along anyway. So, that's what you get. You should show up here in person on the Zoom, in person live Zoom. Anyways, pattern recognition. If we build our understanding about certain organisms' movements, right? Going back to hunter-gatherers, we're going to go back there quick, maybe. Hunting and fishing, to understand the movements of game, of our food, right? Food, water, shelter, sex, and then maybe thought process or something like that. Some of these key things for humanity to understanding ourselves on a core level, our core self as organisms on this planet. We understand the movements of the game that we're looking at, right? Mammoths, woolly mammoth. And eventually we start to see these patterns that these animals move in patterns. And then we can kind of predict where they're going to go. And if they're not where we think that they're going to be, because real life has unpredictable variables, keep us on our toes. We can usually come up with some pretty good ideas of where they'd be. Where are these animals if they're not where we think they would be? If the animals or fish are not at our first guest location, are they at our second guest location, third guest location? So that's pattern recognition, but that's understanding the flow, the movements of these animals. And so all things move in a cycle, and that's flow. So we understand how the different cycles happen. That's how we understand that's what astronomy is. That's how people navigate by the stars. They understand all the movements of everything around us, and that's all flow. All the different cycles. And we as humans, that's pattern recognition. We're recognizing consistencies in these natural movements. So then we can predict where they're going to be next. So that's understanding their flow. That's understanding their patterns. And yeah, water. If we might as well jump off into some more energy stuff. Here's meditation I like. And I don't do a lot of meditations, but if you know me, I do feel it. But one of my favorite meditations is to have someone go in their mind, create this space, and in the woods, natural habitat, and go to the river. So there's a river in our mind, right? Imagine this. Sorry, I'm not prepared to do like a full-on meditation, but I'm going to explain the process, and then maybe hit me up if anyone wants to do a full real meditation on this. We create this natural setting in our mind, and there's a river in it, right? The good thing about this is then you can see the river in real world and go to that place, and it really sinks in. No pun intended. Don't drown in the river. But we go to the river's edge, and through the river we can see all the cycles, and we can see through the different seasons there's periods of high flow and low flow. And like spring is a high flow time, and a lot of times there's rain in the spring and mountain snows are melting, and so the rivers have a high flow, and in high flow it's washing a lot of new things down. The water's moving really fast, and you want to be careful in high flow. That's definitely a time to watch your wading if you're fishing or otherwise recreating. But it's refreshing. It's refreshing everything. And there's always, these lessons of balance. So high flow everyone's like, oh yeah, high flow, high flow, high flow. But ebb's critical to that too. And high flow is good, but can also be dangerous, just like lessons of real river. High flow doesn't mean disconnected. High flow doesn't mean unconscious drifting down the river with whatever. Our consciousness is still important. And then in late summer or fall, that's a lot of times when rivers are at their lowest and more gentle flows. And we can see how the river changes the landscape. So if we're doing this meditation and we've got this river in our mind, which I think very much emulates what's actually happening and is interconnected, and with all the different forms of water, right? Solid, liquid, gas. So snow, steam, water. There's so much transformation available with water, but to understand this flow happening, and this flow can change our thought process. So by understanding more about work and how important having a good relationship with work is to embracing challenge, that's letting flow. So that's letting flow happen. And that's basically it's changing the landscape in our mind. And if we say grow a healthy mental habitat, that's part of it. So we relate to natural ecosystems in our thought process for meditations, for intentional meditations. That's a powerful tool to think that, okay, I'm directing this river when this flow happens. And the contemporary science language is developing new neural pathways. So as we understand new things, as we get rid of restrictions, there's new neural pathways being developed. And if we understand how all that works, we can also help energetically focus and try to grow new neural pathways. And I think that by understanding water and the movements of water and flow and getting rid of restrictions, we can start to open up those things and understand ourselves on a better level there. So understanding that this river through our mind and through our cognitive thought process. But if we say that we're physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, of course we've got flow happening through our physical being and through our bloodstream, right? There's oxygen in our bloodstream. Everyone knows we don't want blocked arteries, right? We don't want clogged arteries. Everyone knows if you don't want any restrictions on your blood flow. You don't want to have a tight rubber band on your arm. That's restricting blood flow, restricting oxygen. Also, faster moving water carries more oxygen. So all these parallels, and this is why I set the example of understanding a natural world, is that there's examples that we can see that are replicated in our physical being, and then also in our thought process, in our emotion, and even our spirituality. But the physical external world, nature, and all those natural laws and all those natural examples were the best tools for us to align ourselves and grow as humans. So we've got external ecosystems and we've got internal ecosystems. And then I'll say again, because it's just a critical thing coming from a background in contemporary life science, natural sciences. They say you don't understand an organism unless you understand the environment that it evolved in. And man, I don't know if there's anything more true that's ever been said by contemporary society. Not that that's a high standard, but we just said it, the flow of the river and the constrict, and we've got flow in our physical being. All medicine, modern medicine knows flow. We've got to have flow. We've got air coming in from our lungs and oxygen being redistributed through our blood. All those things are happening. And then isn't that what's happening in our nervous system also? That's another, basically, it's another river system. Our nervous system's a river system. Our blood vessels are a river system, right? When they come in from, here's the mountains, and the vessels are smaller, and they all start coming together and meeting in a bigger place, the ocean, right? From the mountain flows to the ocean. And the ocean's the biggest part of this planet, right? So there's why it's important to understand natural ecosystems, because it truly is us understanding ourselves in the most basic way, right? And we talk about foundation and cognitive thought process and understanding and logic. We want the most common denominator, understanding the most common denominator. Easy to say, right? Understanding the most common denominators is our foundation. So life's been happening and river systems have been happening for forever. And so we understand how that happens. We understand how we flow, and it's easy to see in our physical. Now take the step outside the petri dish, the place that contemporary science and the scientific method isn't going to be able to follow, into our mental, emotional, spiritual ecosystems. So that's a little bit about flow there. Does anybody have anything to say before I continue? Anyone? Okay. The flow, Star Wars fans, the Force, right? That's I think a good example of flow to release. And what does Yoda say? There's no try. There's either do or not do. You're either in flow state or you're not. But that's in that flow state is where the amazing things in life that we don't understand can happen. So it's super, super important to have that. And this isn't my woo-woo channel. That's another place. That's off the clock stuff. But that's really a super important part. But to stay open for change, I'll put it that way. Keep space open for change to happen. I've said that a lot. As a matter of fact, I think we did a workshop on that. And yeah, it's about staying positive. But when we don't have space for change when we have space for change to happen in our mental ecosystem, in our mental, emotional, spiritual ecosystem, physical ecosystem too, they're all connected. This is our four main ecosystems interconnected. So we are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So holding a space for change to happen, that's a place for that flow to come in. And whether it happens or not, who knows? We don't know what's going to happen. But as a meditation, another meditation, it's like the meditation station tonight. being able to keep space for change is a super, super important thing for us to stay healthy, right? And when we talk about leaving space for change, and of course, in the examples of extreme challenge or overwhelm, we're talking about anxiety is a key thing. So understanding how anxiety blocks flow. Anxiety basically is restrictive and constricting, right? Scarcity mindset, anxiety, same thing. Those are constricting. Those are inhibiting flow and restricting flow. That's why it's so important. That's why people spend so much time talking about transmuting and transcending anxiety, and all these conversations about alleviating anxiety, and all these long conversations to help people grow a bigger, healthier context and mental habitat, to grow abundant understanding around anxiety. Because if we have a more understanding around anxiety and what it is, then we're able to avoid it, right? So if we're going down the river and there's a big boulder sticking out of the water, we've got maybe a better chance of avoiding it than a boulder that's just barely underneath the water, right? From going from our subconscious into our conscious. Um, so all these understandings about anxiety, scarcity mindset, and the big 7-part workshop that we just did on what is it? What's that thing called? What's the word? Yes, scarcity mindset, narcissism. Yes, the big thing we did about narcissism is all based on scarcity mindset, and that not doing our introspect, not working with our own natural ecosystem, not understanding our own emotional flow. I mean, if we talk about emotional intelligence, that's understanding our flow. That's our emotional flow. And that's that classic example of narcissist is not relating to emotion. So they don't have a context of flow, because that's what's happening is when we're receiving information from our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, from any of those faucets, we're picking up energy, and then it goes through our thought process. But if we ignore those things, if we ignore our natural receptors of physical instinct, mental, objective thought process, emotional intelligence, spiritual, ancestral wisdom, if we're ignoring those, we're not letting that flow happen. That's, in essence, we're building a dam in these. Whoops, what's going on here? I didn't mean to do that. What did I signal something? Okay. We're putting up dams in our flow from those receptors. And so this whole 7-part workshop we did on narcissism was identifying places. The core of the quote unquote narcissist is they're not in flow. They're stifling their own flow. The first thing is stifling our own flow is not doing our introspection and not having that connection, not having that interconnectivity, not recognizing that interconnectivity to our internal natural ecosystems, right? So external natural ecosystems, internal natural ecosystems. Not having that connection, one of the natural laws, interconnectivity, that key, that first natural law of interconnectivity. And some people know, some cultures, that's front and center, connection to everything. That's front and center. So if we know connection to everything, if we know these understandings about how these natural laws work, we can see them. And so having this connection to our internal natural ecosystems is key to our development, of course. And the examples of people not connected to their internal natural ecosystems, that's a narcissism in a nutshell. But to go back and understand that our introspection is natural, food, water, shelter, sex, thought process, introspect, energy recognition, those things that are, we talk about energy, but that's cognitive is picking up. And if you say cognitive, it's cognitive even on ancestral wisdom level. So cognitive in the holistic spectrum, or gut instinct even. I'm using cognitive as gut instinct, emotional intelligence, all those things is how I'm using it, just so I don't have to say all those different words to get into the nuances that deep. So allow me that, I'll appreciate it. All the false narratives of what is an ego. If we talk about egocentric pursuits, want without context. That's how I say egocentric pursuits. Want without context. And then of course there's the other ego, which is the false self, as Eckhart Tolle describes. Both of those are huge restrictions to flow. Think about where to go here for the next however long. Egocentric pursuits. We'll go down those roads. Egocentric pursuits, want without context. Well, what's the without context? Without context is that connection to everything. And it's always gonna, if we bring whatever we want through our natural internal natural ecosystems, natural internal ecosystems, however the case may be, we get a resonance. And that's what we want. That's alignment. And that's when our peak flow happens. I'm going to say that again. When we're in tune with our natural internal ecosystem, whatever we want, we've got feedback. We've got feedback from our instinct, our objective thought process, our emotional intelligence, our ancestral wisdom, and we can use all those to cross-check each other. So if we're fully functioning, if we're human in its fully functioning capacity, well, there's some more actually, but for now, we can cross-check those. So we want this, but does that align with what's best for my physical, what's best for my mental, what's best for my emotional, what's best for my spiritual? And that's the business of being human, by the way, because that's looking at ourselves from an objective lens, and that's going through process. So that process, one of the fundamentals of our development, food. So when we say business or trade, business of being human, some of the fundamentals of our development: communication, teamwork, process development, bridging of cultures, understanding of value. So that process is a super important thing to humans. So if we use our four main modes of introspection, again, instinct, objective thought process, emotional intelligence, ancestral wisdom, whatever we want, we can cross-reference. And some things are easier than others. If I haven't eaten all day and I'm hungry, I'm going to want food. Okay, well, that's easy. But wait, what kind of food? Am I hungry? Am I gonna, revert to the closest thing? Is it gonna be junk food, or am I gonna wait till I get home and cook a healthy meal? Those are the critical parts, and that's the consciousness. And that's the part that we need to develop and grow and keep healthy, because that's the transcending anxiety. The anxiety of the compulsive reactive state, right? We've got we've got a whole bunch, but for right now, this where we're at in this conversation, we've got two main states. We've got conscious, responsive, and we've got compulsive reactive. So if we're hungry at the end of the day and I'm away from home, fast food is the default. That's the compulsive reactive that unfortunately a lot of people get sucked into, because they don't take time and just transcend that anxiety, transmute that anxiety, to put that anxiety out here for a minute and stop and be still, right? Remember that fast flow, how fast flow is good, but can also be bad. Well, when we're in fast flow, welcome to America. I was going to say that, right? That's the colonial contemporary narrative, is fast flow, fast, 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 rush, 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 rush. And that's exactly the energy you feel from relationship with narcissist, right? Narcissism, colonialism, same thing, the societal reflection of the individual. But when we're in that rush, what happens? We don't get a chance to do this and stop the flow and think. We don't get a chance to really process what we're doing. And since contemporary narrative, yes, choices, it's the time to stop and make sure we have our choices. It's a time to exercise our own volition and stop and say, yeah, you know what? I don't want that choice, or I don't want any of those choices. I want to find something that's not on the menu, not just to be herded along at lightning pace, so people don't have a chance to stop and be the conscious individuals that we're capable, that we have the capacity, back to carrying capacity, that we have the capacity to be. So that flow state, in high flow, I think one of the most important ways to let flow happen is to understand its balance, and that's ebb, and the importance of ebb, or balance. If we have fast flow, then we also want slow flow. And again, natural lessons. I know one person here already probably knows where I'm going with this. If you know what a river does, it's got runs and pools. So it's got places of fast flow and then slow flow, and fast flow and slow flow. And a lot of times the fast flow is narrow and a little bit of a steeper grade, and then it goes out into a pool. So it's narrower, wider, and that's the pattern that most rivers follow to some extent. But that's like the classic. If you think of a river, you'll see these, especially the headwaters. We've got headwaters where it's steeper terrain, where the snow's melting, where the river starts, and those are downhill, lots of elevation drop. So it's fast, smaller streams generally. And then they start to hit like foothills. And that's when you get the runs and the pools. So you get the fast water, and it's usually fast, shallow water, then slower, deep water, fast, shallow water, slower, deep water. And then if a river then it gets bigger down and closer to the ocean, a lot of times, you'll still get, you'll get more, slow water. Anyways, that's just a, it's a generality. But if we understand our flow, we need those peak times, but we also need those rest times too. And one of the big sicknesses in contemporary society, I'll say it that way. One of those big sicknesses in contemporary society is not getting the ebb time, not getting the slow flow. Because what I just said, rush, 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 rush. And then since we're in a societal construct built by narcissists that don't slow down and think, like humans have done to get to this spot, but it's where we are now. If we understand this is where we can change that flow. We understand some of these things. We're in the flow of contemporary society that's too fast, especially, when things are going bad, when things aren't doing what we want. Yeah, sometimes you got to go through them and power through them, but also, there's as a species capable of objective thought process, there's also a time to sit back and think and assess the situation and regain some consciousness and make intentional moves forward. So making the intentional moves forward is a big part of our species wellness going into the future, and making intentional moves to understand our species is a huge part of that. So we can understand our species on a species level, on a human level, and understand how we actually function, then we can start to help ourselves and help others that are not capable of helping themselves if needed. The only reason that some of the problems exist in contemporary society today is because people don't know enough about people. And that's super clear. I always say in contemporary society, in governments, contemporary governments, colonial governments don't know anything about human habit or habitat. And those things are intricately connected because we're in a habitat. You can't understand the organism unless you understand the environment that it developed in. That's over and over again. We have to understand our natural ecosystem in order to understand our internal natural ecosystem. And that lets flow happen. If through understanding, and we've said this before in these workshops, in understanding, there's a natural emotional wellness component. As we grow our understanding, if we're doing the work right now, everyone here is doing the work. We're doing the work that needs to be done. We're understanding our species. We're understanding ourselves, which is understanding our species. We're making the connection between ourselves to the natural environment, to the collective, and the collective consciousness or unconsciousness, as the case may be. But turning that flow from unconscious to conscious, as we know ourselves, as we know these things, we start to get proficient, and we start to do some pattern recognition. We can see where things are going. We can see where the dams are in both ourself and in the collective. Big dams, of course, government money clocks. I got to say that. If that really doesn't resonate with you now, hang out. It will. I guarantee it will. The reason being because they're inanimate objects in the natural ecosystem. The longer version is that people are relating to those things in natural habitat. We call that structure. Everything relates to structure. Fish mostly don't hang out in open water unless they're that species. That's a nuance. But fish hide behind rocks and in weeds and along shore and along depth changes, and animals have trails that go like on the edge of terrain changes. So there's a meadow and there's a wood. The animals won't be in the meadow, generally speak, well, maybe in a meadow, but like in a big open space, animals won't be there. They won't be in the middle of the woods. They'll be along the edges. So relating to structure, and our species and every other species on the planet relates to natural structure. And when we relate to natural law, right, understanding the connection to everything, sustainability, challenge, balance, ebb flow, cycles, carrying capacity, those are natural laws. But written law is a different thing, right? But we're using the term law for each of those. So it's super important to understand, if you hear the word law and it goes to jails and fines and all that sort of thing instead of natural ecosystems, that means your mentality is out of whack, because you're in a pseudo system, because you've been forced into contemporary system, colonial system, that is forcing us to relate to an inanimate object. Time. You got the clock and you got natural cycles. We've got sun and moon cycles. We've got seasonal cycles. We've got our own lifespans. There's the lifespans of things around us. That's real time. So everything else relates to that. And our species related to that for what, 99.9999+ % of our existence. But now, if you say time, most people's head is in the clock that has no cycles. It's just a linear trajectory, not doing anything, no variables, no diversity. It's not a real thing, but people are related to that. We talk about value, food, water, air, shelter, right? That's what I meant by value. How many people's mind went to printed currency? See, you're fucked up there. That's what I'm saying. Those are inanimate objects blocking flow in the human mental ecosystem. So that's flow. And I think I could talk for another hour about this, but that's an important point. I think I'm going to leave it there. Kraig Smyth, MyBizGuide, Business of Being Human, the outdoor guide for your inner journey. See, camouflage hat. All right, this was Friday night workshop, wellness topic, flow. Thanks everybody for joining. And I know some people abstained from Facebook today, and I respect that. Obviously, I'm doing the work that I think I need to be doing here. But if you're on Facebook, thanks for following along. Thanks for being right along by that. And yeah, bye Facebook.